You've just finished giving this interesting talk. I wonder if you could give a sort of brief kind of overview of what that talk was about.
Well, it's about the use of, if you like, behavioural models, more realistic models of behaviour, agent-based models, principally for corporate clients, trying to solve practical problems. Because I think an important point is one of the points that's sometimes but quite often made about agent-based modelling, social simulation, is that in some way these are toy models, but they're not. That even apparently quite simple models can nevertheless be found useful by people who actually have to make decisions. Of course, they're not going to make it solely on the basis of a model, but they find these useful. They're very practical and will produce answers which policymakers and decision makers find useful.
Okay. So now, interestingly, agent-based modelling is still very much a minority sport in economics and social science. I just wonder for you personally, how, since you've been active in this area for a very long time, how you got into agent-based modelling and how you ended up using this methodology?
Well, I think this is a very broad question, but I think it's increasingly the case. In a sense, because I'm an economist, and so economics rests upon essentially the use of calculus, because there's really only one model in economics, which is that agents take the optimal decision subject to a variety of constraints. And in a sense, without going into the details, let me just say and be charitable and say it's been around for 100 years, so essentially it solved all the problems it possibly can. In a sense, this paradigm is exhausted. It's been worked on for 100 years. So anywhere it can give insights, it's already done that. And it's clearly got severe limitations. It's got some value. So how do we take things forward? And what's clear for the 21st century with the computers, when we're liberated, and this is a key point for me, we're liberated from the need to find analytical solutions, which of course restricts enormously the sort of questions we can address. And computer simulation seems to me a natural way of addressing issues in non-linear, non-equilibrium systems which characterise human society and human economies, instead of the very narrow bits that we can address by looking for analytical solutions. So that's a rather technical answer, but that's what I've been interested in, because I think this is the way to do science in the 21st century.
Okay. Now, in your talk, you covered a lot of ideas, and I know that from your background, you've explored many different areas. But if you were to pick currently one interesting idea or problem that you're thinking about, what would you mention?
Well, I think what I'm thinking about is what constitutes rational behaviour of agents, whether individuals or companies or whatever. What constitutes rational behaviour in the circumstances of the 21st century? So economics has got its rational agent, but that's just one definition of rationality. That's what people forget. It's not that people are acting irrationally, they're using different definitions. And if you've got a case where literally there will be billions of choices in consumer products that people can choose from, billions, not millions, how can they possibly gather the information and process it in any sort of optimal way? It's not rational to behave like that. And the big challenge, it seems to me, over the next few years is to articulate a basic building block of a new rational mode of behaviour. That the economic one was relevant past 100 years ago when choice was more limited and so forth. We live in a completely different world, and we need a new agent building block of rational behaviour in the social sciences.
Right, so sort of rationality 2.0 for the 21st century.
No, exactly. And so economic rationality is one.
Yeah, sure.
And if it's assumptions of reasonable approximations, that is rational. But it can't possibly be rational to behave like that in the world that we're in. You can't process that information.
Yeah, it's interesting. A more general question now: if you were to pick one particular book, lecture, or paper that's been formative for you over your entire career in the way that you see things and that's shaped the way that you view things, I mean, it's a difficult thing to do. But
yes.
If I was to ask you, would anything come to mind?
I think there are several, but I think one that I find extremely valuable was Duncan Watt's paper in Proceedings of the National Academy of Science in 2002, Global Cascades on a Random Network. Which formalises ideas already held, articulated by very distinguished people in the social sciences, about how do cascades spread across networks of agents when they're simply by definition imitating other agents according to a variety of rules. And I think the real insight are two things. First of all, the same initial shock, if you like, we have agents in one state of the world and a few made to convert by definition or chosen at random. How far does that spread? And by construction, the initial change of the same size can have radically different outcomes. So it breaks the common sense connection of size of event and potential outcome. And I think that's a very deep insight, which I return to again and again. And I'm often going back and trying to understand more about the properties of this model and ones which are related to it.
Okay, and a final question, which is almost like asking for a prediction in a way. So it's always dangerous to make predictions, but if you could pick one particular area where you believe in the future there'll be major policy impact and application coming from agent-based modelling, what would that be?
Well, I think agent-based modelling can do a lot to illuminate economic recessions, because not all recessions are driven by financial crises. They seem to be particularly acute examples, but they're a persistent feature of the Western economies. And I think agent-based models can be valuable in that they incorporate network effects which are missing from conventional economics. So it's not just a cascade of bankruptcies in a financial crisis. It's cascades, say, of optimism and pessimism across firms, across individuals. So it seems to me they're the ideal framework for actually making a real breakthrough in trying to understand why recessions happen. Doesn't mean we'll be able to predict them, but we'll have a much better idea of why they happen. And conventional economics essentially lacks a satisfactory theory of this really very fundamental feature of the Western economies. But I think agent-based models have the potential to make a genuine scientific leap on this matter.
Okay, well, thanks for answering these questions, and thanks for a really great talk.